So last time, in the last lesson, we essentially got our player moving side to side. And as I launch my game mode, I can move side to side. And then we're also flipping the direction of the character, right? We created that flip function. This lesson, we're going to go back into MonoDevelop and get our player to jump. There's a couple of things we have to do here in Unity first before we go and do that in the script. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create some points. We'll call them ground points that are going to check for collisions with our platforms or anything else for that matter. In order to create those ground points, we're going to go to game object, create empty, and we'll do that 3 times. The first one I'll call GPL for ground point left, and GP center, C, and GPR for right. Right. Now what I want to do is I want to find these points, and I'm just going to go to my little widget that allows me to move these points around. Remember, these are empty game objects, so uh, they're not, they don't have anything attached to them, so it's just this empty object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right near his feet. Let me zoom in here a little bit. I want to put it right next. This is game point left, so I'll put it on the left side of the character. Game point center, I'll put that right in the middle. Game point right, I'll put that on the right side. Oops. Here we go. So I got my 3 game points. Now that I've located them, I'm going to select the 3 of them and make them a child of the player so that as the player moves, if I move him over here, my ground points are moving along with him, right? Because I want them to travel with him as he's moving around on the game space. Okay, so I've made my ground points. Now we can go into MonoDevelop and back into our player script and start working on some of the variables that we'll need in order to make this work. So the first thing we're doing is we're creating a private transform array called ground points. So this first variable sets up an array of points, and will eventually, because we have serialized field here, okay, that's the same, almost the same as creating a public variable, meaning we'll be able to interact with it uh, in the inspector. So if I save this right now and I go back out to Unity, I click on my player and look in the inspector, I should see now, you see, I have some more variables here. I have ground points and ground radius and what is ground and jump force. And those are all these serialized fields that I'm adding, right? These 3 here and then this one here. So if you need to pause the video and copy your code here to get these new variables in, we've got ground radius, float. We've got a layer mask, what is ground. We've got 2 private bools, is grounded and jump, that we can set to true or false. And we've got our jump force, which is going to allow us to control how much the character jumps. So take a few minutes to put those into your code. Okay, now we're going to move into writing the functions that are going to control our jumping. So first of all, we've got our handle input function, and this is essentially taking input from our space bar. You can change this to the up arrow if you prefer, but if input get key down key code space bar, right? If that happens, if this input comes through as true, then we're setting the jump bool to true, and we're going to use that in our handle movement function to test to see whether we should be adding our jump force. So this is just turning our jumping off and on. And if you want to just see if this is working or get a little test going, you could, again, do a debug log, debug.log, and we could say, jumping, and we could save that. And now when I hit, as long as I put handle input, private void handle input, we're going to put that inside void update. This way it runs every frame and it never gets skipped, because the last thing we want is to have us pressing the jump button and the game skips over that frame when we were pressing the button and we don't end up jumping right at the edge of an abyss or something like that. So I'll save that. I've created my handle input function. Should report every time I hit the space bar that I'm jumping. We've got that in void update so that it's running every frame. Let's go back out and let's go to the console and let's hit play. And now when I hit the space bar, every time I'm jumping, right? So that's what we want to have happen. That means that's working. Okay, we've got that working. But he's not actually jumping yet, right? So we have to do a couple more things here to get that to happen. So let's first start by figuring out the difference between when we're grounded and when we're not grounded, right? Because we don't always want to be able to jump. We only really want to be able to jump when we are grounded, when we're on a platform. We don't want to jump in midair or something like that. So this function here, this private bool is grounded, is going to return a true or a false. And the way it's been written here is to test uh, a few conditionals, right? So the first conditional says if my rigid body dot velocity dot y is less than or equal to 0, meaning I am not moving along the y-axis of my game, right? So if I'm not moving along the y-axis of my game, then I'm going to be checking to see whether those ground points that I made are actually colliding with something other than my player, right? Because we know they're attached to our player, but we're testing in this code as to whether they are overlapping or touching something other than our player. And if they are, then we're going to return true here. So is grounded, this bool is going to return a true. If they're not, right, if that's not happening, then this function is going to return false. And so is grounded will be false. Now, the way that we get this to be running continuously and actually affecting our game is by, in our fixed update here, we've got this new private bool that we've created called is grounded. This is the variable is grounded. This is the function is grounded. So every frame of our game, we're checking and resetting the is grounded variable to be the value of the is grounded function. So if the is grounded function returns true, then the is grounded variable is true. If the is grounded function returns false because we are in the air, then is grounded will return false. So this is a very important line of code here, which resets is grounded. Why is that important? Because we're using it right here in handle movement. So if you look at handle movement, we've changed it a little bit. Okay, this part has been added. If is grounded and jump. So remember what conditionals do, right? They are checking inside these parentheses to see, is this true or is this false? And when I separate the two conditionals or the two, in this case, variables with two ampersands, It basically means that both of these things have to be true in order for me to go inside the conditional and do the three things that I've got inside those curly braces, right? So if both of these things is true, if is grounded returns true and jump returns true, right? Then I want to set is grounded to false and jump to false, and I'm adding force to my character along the x or the y axis, right? So my rigid body, add force, new vector 2, and remember new vector 2, we're going to have an x component, which we don't want when I press the jump button to move along the x component. We want to move along the y, and so here's my y argument, and I'm setting my y argument to jump force. Okay? So moving down, we've got our is grounded function working now. We've got our handle input going. We've added uh, is grounded um, and jump into our handle movement, right, as a conditional to add our force. We've started checking for whether we're grounded or not, and we've added handle input into the update. Now, the last thing we need to do is set all these serialized fields in our player. So let's save this and go back out, and I'm going to select my player, and I'm looking in my player script here now. Let me go ahead and zoom down here to it so you can see it a little bit better. And in my player script, I've got my movement speed. This is asking me for ground points. And this is the array. Remember, this is the array of points, those ground points that we're going to be checking for collision with the ground. And I want to set this to 3 because we have 3 ground points. Okay, and now you'll see element 0, element 1, and element 2. And it's looking for some sort of object here to check. And so I'm going to look for my ground points, and I'm going to drag them down to these little spots. There's my left, my center, my right. And the ground radius, you can play around with this. Try to start it as small, maybe 0.02. If it's not recording you as being in touch with the ground, you either have to adjust those ground points or change the size of this. Nothing is ground right now. We want everything to be ground. And our jump force, I'm going to set it to, I don't know, 500. You can play around with that too. Okay, so we've got our player script all set up here, and we should be able to test this out to see if it's working. So let me zoom back out, and let's play this. And when I hit the space bar, he jumps, and I get him moving in 2 different directions. I can control him while he's in the air. That's a nice feature. I like to do that in a platform game. And hopefully you had some success getting your jumper to work.